Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today on creating positive learning environments. Before we get into our core content, let's look at the disclaimer from the Department of Education.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number ED ESE 14D0008 with Synergy Enterprises Incorporated. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, methodology, technique, or enterprise mentioned here is intended or should be inferred.
Hi, my name is Andrew Francis, and I will be your facilitator for this session. I am an education specialist with the Y4Y team. I've been with the team for almost a year now, and prior to joining the team, I worked as a site director for an auto school time program. I've worked in both after school and during the summer. And I've also worked in education for over 10 years, and so I'll bring to bear my experience from those interactions as we share in this session today. Our objectives today are one, we will help you to assess your program climate in relation to clearly defined values and culture. We will also be sharing with you strategies that you can use to create and sustain a positive learning environment. And by that, we mean an environment where your students, your families, your program staff feel safe and they also feel supported. We will also share with you Y4Y resources that you can use to facilitate these positive relationships among staff and students. So while we are going through today's session, we'd like for you to download and use the implementation checklist. And that checklist is available on the Y4Y website. And so you can, of course, go ahead and share in the session by downloading that document. And that document allows for you to follow us as we go through the strategies for today. We will also provide a list of that to accompany this recording, so you can use it as well. So let's begin by defining a positive learning environment. When we talk about a positive learning environment, we're talking about an environment in which everyone, is playing an equally important role. And in playing their roles, the aim is to create a space and a place where everyone feels safe and respected. And we believe that if there is mutual respect between and amongst the parties, then we will be able to produce an environment where our students will be more engaged, parents and families will be more engaged. We'll also be engaging our stakeholders. And as a result, we will see increased levels of productivity. And it will be an environment where our students thrive and grow. And this is really the ultimate goal of any 21st CCLC program, to increase academic performance and to expand the social and emotional skills of our students and to make them into optimally developed young people who will also become citizens contributing to our society and to the world. And so take a moment to reflect on your program and how does your program compare to the definition that we shared just now? Uh, what's the atmosphere like in your program? Are your stakeholders warmly greeted when they come to your program? Is there someone who is readily available to meet them and to provide them with the assistance that they may need? Is your environment one that is productive? Is it engaging, or is it for the most part disorganized? And this may also apply for you if you are working in a virtual space as well. Uh, are people just chilling on the Zoom or the Google Meets platform, or do we find that your students are fully engaged and they're learning and they're growing in the process? As you contemplate those questions, that will be the focus of today's session. We will be looking at, how do we provide you with tips and tools that you can use to create and sustain positive learning environments. And we'll do that by taking you through these six strategies, which Y4Y has developed. We will define organizational culture and climate and show you how to go about assessing those two factors within your program and using that information to plan for behavior management and to also build the positive relationships that you need to create that ideal learning environment. And as you do that as well, how do you take steps to be intentional in designing your program to meet the demands of your students and to be engaged in a continuous improvement process and having a plan for that so that you are constantly taking steps to improve and to provide the services and that meet the needs of your students and their families. Let's begin with our first strategy, which is to define your organizational culture and climate. Now, building a positive learning environment requires that we lay a very solid and level foundation. And we can only create this foundation by ensuring that we, clearly define our organizational culture. And when an organizational culture is clearly defined, then you will also recognize that all your stakeholders are aware of those of your expectations, but they also understand them and they know what is required of them in order for them to meet those standards and to help you to create that ideal culture. And so we really define our organizational culture by one, establishing our program's vision and mission statements. And so you want to consider, do you have a vision and mission statement that is known by all your stakeholders? If not, you could also decide to adopt the vision and mission statement that your host organization has, or you could create your own, which is aligned to your program specific statement. The idea, though, is to ensure that you have these in place because these will then determine the values that will drive your program and also the kind of culture and climate statements that you will develop with your stakeholders to describe for everyone what is it that you're trying to create in your program. What are the expectations? What is the culture you're aiming for? And what climate are you trying to create? No, a vision statement really describes what your program aims to achieve in the long run. And it's usually very short and it's an inspiring statement, but it gives you that big picture goal for your students and their families. And so you want to keep this in mind as you develop your program goals and activities and aspirations. Keep the vision in mind because it really represents that long-term uh, goal you have in mind for your students and their families. And so you want to bear in mind a number of guiding questions as you do that. And that has to do with one, what is the purpose of your program? What problems are you trying to address? And what are the outcomes that you are working towards as a out of school time program? Now, here's an example of a vision statement. And this vision statement is that our program is designed to support the high percentage of our students and families who are English language learners. And as you can see that this example, it's short, it's inspiring, it addresses the big picture, and it's also focused on the students and the families that you are trying to serve within your program. Now, having established that vision, you then move towards establishing your mission, and that mission you will see also supports the vision. And so the mission is really a brief statement of how your program will achieve the vision. And it's really answering these three questions. What are you going to be doing as a program? Who will you be serving? And also, how will you be serving these persons? So here we give you an example of a mission statement which enables you to accomplish the vision. And so, for example, for the vision we mentioned before, in the mission would be that ABC 21st CCLC program will provide, evidence-based out-of-school time activities 5 days a week and hold monthly family events to support all participants and meet their social, emotional, physical, and academic needs. So as you can see, the vision is to ensure that there is safety, that your students are healthy, they are supported, and they're able to graduate and become mature, successful adults. And we tell you exactly how that will be done in the mission statement. So having established your vision and mission, then you will then be in a position to create your values and culture statements. And so values are really what your organization believes and what you hold true to and what you put into everything that you do. It becomes a part of your policy, but also your practice. While a culture statement describes the culture you want to create. So values are what you believe on one hand, while your culture statements describe the culture you want to create. And so what we do is that we actually turn our culture statements into climate statements. And as a result, our climate statements really describe what your program values look like in action. So what behaviors are we expected to see when we come to your program? So when a stakeholder comes to your program, what would they see? What would they hear if they were to walk around your program? And even within the virtual space, what will they see? What will they hear? And so you want to probably write down about 3 climate statements, and you will find that the clearer that you are in your descriptions, the easier it will be for your stakeholders to understand your expectations. So again, your climate statements, which are written based on your culture statements, really say what your program values look like in action and the behaviors that you expect from your staff and what stakeholders will see when they come and participate in your program. So to show you our climate statements in action, let's examine how your value, your culture, and your climate statement are connected. And so we start first with the value of respect, and we move down to our culture statement. And in this culture statement, you can see that we desire to build, or we commit to build respectful relationships with all stakeholders. And then we go a step further in terms of determining what behaviors you will see in order for us to meet that culture statement. And so we commit to 1, not to discipline a student in front of others, and 2, we'll show up on time, and we'll also work collaboratively with each other. So as you can see that each statement builds on each other and they're all connected, and you're able to map out what the organization values, you understand, how will that be demonstrated, and what behaviors you'll be able to use to identify that in action in our program. We move to key strategy 2, which has to do with assessing your culture and climate. So having established that in key strategy 1, we're now able to to move to this level where we can use several methods to assess how well are we doing, or in fact, what is our current culture, what is our current climate, and how can we improve on that. So previously we identified for you the outcomes for a program culture and climate, and we also formulated for you an example of a vision and mission statement. Now to reach that outcome, we need to find out our current program status. And so when we assess whether the specific behaviors outlined are happening, we really need to observe, analyze, and also reflect on what's happening in our program. And so there are a number of methods that you can use to observe, analyze, and reflect. But here we share with you a few. You could consider developing and distributing climate and culture perception surveys, and Y4Y actually has samples of these that you can use to support you with that. You could also use guidelines from your state or your territory on the steps that you can take to conduct a program evaluation. And that will also give you some impression of your program's culture and environment. And you may also choose to adopt a framework that is being used by your partner school or district, or even your host or parent organization. We've found, sorry, also that observation tools such as checklists and consultation documents for discussions with parents and students and staff are also very helpful as you go about assessing your program's culture and climate. Now, having a plan for behavior management is paramount to creating a positive learning environment. And this is really what we look at under key strategy number three. And this strategy is particularly important because if if you can have a plan in place, then you're able to increase positive behaviors in your students. But you can also have a plan in place as to how you respond to negative behaviors. And so you will find that this is a very important part of of our training, ensuring that we're taking proactive approaches to managing behavior in our programs. And so planning for behavior ensures that your program space is well organized to facilitate positive behaviors amongst your students, and also that you are providing standard responses to challenging behaviors as they may present themselves within your program space as well. So you will find that how your space is organized will either encourage or reduce the number of incidents of negative behavior that students may present. And so here we provide for you a few examples of some design elements that you may want to keep in mind as you plan for as you plan a well-managed program that allows for you to also manage behaviors within your program space. So you want to use anchor charts, and you would want to also consider working with students to develop these anchor charts. And these really outline the expectations that you have for them as to how they will behave, or how they will interact with each other. And you can also create posters that, that also demonstrate the social contract that you are establishing and having them displayed in your physical space. Or you could also consider having those posted on your virtual platforms from day to day, whether at the beginning, at the end, or even throughout your virtual sessions. Give students opportunities to unwind. You want to ensure there are procedures for requesting assistance, so students should probably raise their hands if they want assistance rather than speak out. And you can use others, all of them that were listed here are also included in our handouts for this course on Y4Y. You want to ensure that you have procedures for students to go to the bathroom, how to also access additional supplies, but also ensure that you have a calendar in place so students know what's next and you are very engaged in your approaches to learning, so that the students' time on task is fun and it's exciting, and so it reduces their need to want to act out and to present negative and challenging behaviors as well. Now, that takes us to key strategy number four, and this is where we talk about building relationships with our students. And it's important that we build trusting relationships because these relationships will also have long-term effects on students' academic performance, but also on their social growth. So, however, your staff uh, does it, whatever they have to do, it's important for you to build their capacity so that they're able to be intentional in making, relationship building a reality. And there are really four broad areas to focus on when building trusting relationships. One, you want to show students that you are interested in knowing them individually, and I've seen that in many programs where our site coordinators or frontline staff, they know the students, and that's something that I did as well as a out of school time site director, in taking the time out to know students and to know as much about them as possible. And so at the frontline level, you want to ensure that your staff focus on icebreaker activities that build the community, that build the team, and also allow for students to connect. You want to also spend much time getting to know the students personally, but also showing them that you really care about them. And this really has to do with also connecting with your students individually. And so you want to talk to the students' school day teacher or their counselor to get an insight as to what will be happening in the student's life. And you want to be cautious as you do that, because you want to give the students an opportunity to demonstrate and to become themselves within your program without the baggage of there are other experiences, but it's important to know. But while you're knowing that, give them a fresh slate and opportunity to overcome, negative perceptions that others may have of them in another space, whether it's in the school day space or somewhere else. You may also want to do home visits where possible, and ask students about their favorite things to do or not to do, and that will give you some prompts as to what to do or not to do with that student. And you also want to just create a safe environment for discussion. So you may ask the students to name for you something that frustrated them today. And as they respond to you, you may ask them to tell you more. And you may make connections with other students by asking them to share, has anybody else had that similar experience today? And how did they react? Did their reaction work? If not, what could they have done differently? So this is where you get to the point of connecting with each student on an individual level, and this helps with building relationship as well. The next step is to also, show students that you actually care about them. And to do that, you want to, be actively listening to them, or even using your choice boards to allow for them to determine what activities they want to participate in. Often we're not as democratic as we can be in helping students to participate in the process of having several activities that they could choose from. Even academic, even those that are academic, they may be able to bring students to achieving the same goal, but just a different activity that appeals more to one student as opposed to another. So, one student could be asked to write a song, while another may be able to choose to write a poem, but it will allow for them to demonstrate their understanding of the concept or topic, but using different methods to do so, but of course getting to the same academic goal or objective. And then you want to encourage the students to interact positively with each other. And this, of course, involves you first building that good relationship with them as an adult, and then allowing for them at their level to interact positively with each other, and for them to also name and to list for you what are positive interactions, and allow for them to practice those interactions, and for them to also practice new social skills which they may be developing over time. But nothing beats practice, because they'll be able to perfect those skills as they go along. And finally, we want to be patient and consistent with our students as well, by, of course, even when we are feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, we want to model for students how they should go about pausing and breathing and counting from 1 to 10. And I recall, just as we are at the beginning of the school year, this is a lot of stuff that's been done in our schools, but also in our other school time, to get students acclimatized to the new environment, and for them to be able to name their feelings and to name the issues, and we want to be consistent as well, ourselves, by showing them how to do it. It's more than about establishing rules and regulations, but it's also important that we are consistent in supporting students who are not meeting our expectations. We want to be responsive and not reactive to them as well. And so we want to spend some time to collect our own thoughts, even as we become overwhelmed and frustrated with all that's happening now, even with the health situation, and to show students how they too can adjust and be positive and consistent in responding to challenges that they may have. This will help them to build good relationships with you, but also other with their other peers as well. So here are some resources that you can use. There we provide some classroom management resources. There's also a tool on icebreaker activities that you can use. But I also like the one that allows for you to actually use a questionnaire to build a relationship with your students as an educator. So you ask them to name, positive words that describe them, what do they like about their school, their favorite TV shows, some foods they may like. And so this is where you're getting to know them, and this allows for you to build relationship beyond just interacting with them during the other school time hours, but knowing what are they like outside of that setting as well, and how you can support them along this journey of being positive and developing pro-social behaviors as well. And this takes us to key strategy number 5, where we spend time being intentional in our program design. And by doing that, we want to create a welcoming environment. So we want to greet our students at the door when they're coming in. And even if they're on the online platform, you want to greet them as they're entering a room or a space, a virtual space. You want to invite them into the space as well and allow them to ease in and to feel good. Spend some time also being positive in what you say about your students and ask them how they're doing, but also be ready always to praise them in public, but to discipline them in private. And I know there may be issues with that now, even along the virtual platform, but find ways to connect with your students individually and to provide discipline in private, but give them opportunities to feel appreciated and to big them up essentially in public. You also want to spend time making learning fun by creating those fun learning experiences that will increase their levels of dopamine and the endorphins and the oxygen, which will all promote learning for them. So allow them to work in teams, allow them to be more hands-on in their learning activities, even at home. That's very possible. And allow them to, to have real life experiences and for them to practice the knowledge and skills that you are imparting onto them. Of course, we know technology is always an added resource for us to, help our students to learn, but also to have fun at the same time. And we don't want to have this long list of rules in our school time as well. We want to keep them probably about 3 to 5 or so, but allow for students, to practice and to create the rules because as they participate in the process of creating the rules, they'll be more willing to follow them, and also for them to help you to build those climate building activities for your programs as well. Now, you want to also spend some time adapting your activities to the needs of your students by providing them with opportunities to experience success and to become resilient students. You want to give them the freedom to choose or to change their seat because sometimes they're just tired of being in that space and they need to move around. You want to also be deliberate in teaching social and emotional skills. Not something that happens haphazardly. It has to be taught, and we also want to consider those with special needs and to also those who are making small progress towards positive behaviors. We want to encourage them as they move along that pathway of development. It's important that you also spend some time planning for continuous improvement. This is key strategy number 6. And so we find that many programs have high staff turnover, there are limited resources, there are declining outcomes and other factors. But if you have a continuous improvement process in place, this will allow you to monitor your environment, to identify problem areas, and to also decide what to do next in your program. And so that really is a process that we go through of defining or program, implementing with fidelity, ensuring that all that we are doing, we're giving them the appropriate dosage and we're delivering high quality activities. And as we do that, we are able to then collect our data and analyze the progress that we are making in our programs and to look at steps that we can take to improve. So those are the 6 steps for you. We defined our environment. Defined our culture and climate. We looked at how we assess that, looked at the plans that we put for behavior management, how we go about building relationships with our students, and being intentional in implementing our programs and activities. And of course, we also spoke about how we plan for continuous improvement. So, as this session wraps, please tell us what specific next steps will you take to further develop a positive learning environment for your older school time program. And as you do that, we have additional resources for you. We have trainings to go, and these are hour-long training plans that include PowerPoint, handouts, and training guides. And you want to explore these for tips on how you can go about setting up your environment so that it's positive, and you can also train your staff to build long-lasting relationships or to help them to better manage student behavior as well. And so you can see us at y4y.ed.gov for more information. And of course, email us at y4ywebinars at sciservices.com for more information. And please tell us how you felt about the session and how we can improve, providing these training opportunities and professional development services for you in the future. Thank you for joining us and do have a good rest of the day.